Hi, everyone. Ms. Gonzalez-Clark here. We're going to continue our work with working with expressions and evaluating them. We're going to continue with the Lucia problem. We worked on that in our last video. We have two additional parts that go along with the Lucia problem. I wanted to do them in a separate video because it would have been too lengthy to do it all together. So we have Lucia can complete two car inspections in the same amount of time it takes her to complete one oil change. How long does it take her to complete one car inspection? So I'm just going to kind of go back. Lucia had 3.5 hours left to her workday. So what we did was we took those 3.5 hours and we created a diagram to represent it. So this is 1 hour. That's 2 hours. That's 3 hours. And then we had this last half because it was 3.5 hours that she had left to her workday. So we needed to concentrate on this hole, this hole, this hole, which represented the 3 hours, and then half of this hole. Okay, so this is 3.5 hours. So we determined that when she did in the last video, it takes her a half hour to do an oil change. So we had to take the 3.5 and we had to divide it by a half. So we took each of those hours and we split them in half. We didn't split this one though, because this one is already represented as a half. So once we took the 3.5 and we divided it by half, we noticed that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We were able to make 7 halves, which means that Lucia was able to do 7 oil changes within that amount of time, within those 3.5 hours. Oil. Ooh, that looks crazy. So 7 oil changes. Okay, I abbreviated that. So now we go on. Lucia can complete 2 car inspections in the same amount of time it takes her to complete one oil change. So this represents one oil change, okay? But now it's saying that within that half hour, she can actually do 2 car inspections. So we have 7 half hours here, right? And within each of those half hours, she's able to do 2 car inspections, because it says here she can do 2 car inspections in the same amount of time it takes her to complete one oil change. So that means within each half hour, she can complete 2 car inspections. So again, I'm going to take this half hour. She could do another 2. I'm going to cut it all the way across. Here's another 2. Here's another 2. Another 2. Another 2. And another 2. Okay, so once we do that, what we did was we took a half, which is a half hour, which is what is required of her to do an oil change, and we divided it by 2. So if I took a half and I divided it by 2, I'm left with 1/4. So that means it takes Lucia a quarter of an hour to complete an oil change. To complete a car inspection. And 2 car inspections would be equal to a half hour because a quarter and a quarter is equal to a half. Now, what does a quarter hour look like in regards to time, right? So if I told you you have a quarter hour to finish your work, what does that mean? So let's think about a clock. I'm just going to move this. Give me one moment. Okay, let's think about a clock. If I took a clock and I split it into quarters, a quarter, which is 1/4, would be equal to 15 minutes. Another quarter, which would be 2/4, 2/4, would be equal to 30 minutes. 3/4, which is 3/4, would be equal to 45 minutes. And then 4/4, which is 4/4, would be equal to the 1 whole. Okay, so that means a quarter hour is equal to 15 minutes. And that's coming out not good. Hold on. Okay, 15 minutes. So Lucia can complete 2 car inspections in the same amount of time it takes her to complete 1 oil change. How long does it take her to complete 1 car inspection? So we determined that. We determined that it was a quarter hour, which is equal to 15 minutes. So we're good. We answered that question. Now let's look at the second one. How many inspections can she complete in the rest of her workday? So that's where this diagram comes in. We looked at her 3.5 hours, and we determined from 3.5 hours she was able to do 7 oil changes. Each oil change was a half hour. We took each of those half hours and we divided them by 2. So once we do that, now we can see how many car inspections can she do within those 3.5 hours. So we have 1, 2, which I represented here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So what we did was we did 7 times 2. So that means she can complete 14 car inspections during that amount of time. So what we did was we extended the Lucia problem, and we were able to do 2 more extra things with it. We were able to see how long would it take her to do a car inspection, and then we were able to see how many of these car inspections can she actually conduct during the 3.5 hours. Thanks.